So I'm going to start actually by telling you what the program is not. Sometimes when people hear the Master of Accounting, they think this must be a program to train chartered accountants or to teach people debits and credits or how to do that sort of technical accounting. That is not the case in the Executive Master of Accounting program at Cambridge. What this program is a program that focuses on leadership, innovation, and decision making, and for experienced professionals who might be working in accounting or working in finance or other fields. So, uh, why would we build a program like this at Cambridge? Well, part of the answer is that there's a lot of complexity right now and a lot of uncertainty that business leaders face. And these are headlines from the last few months. And I'm sure you've seen headlines just like this as you followed the news. So lots of talk around and uncertainty around AI and innovation and what the ultimate implications will be in the next 3 to 5 or 10 years time. Um, Climate change is still a pressing matter, and the physical effects of climate change are beginning to be felt more and more. And the role of business and the role of policy in trying to mitigate and or adapt to climate change is still very much an urgent issue. And the geopolitical situation has undergone an upheaval in the last couple of years, and tremendous uncertainty for supply chains and for international businesses. So the environment has become very uncertain. And if I could make a metaphor here communicated through AI generated images, it's this. Business leaders are flying a plane. And that plane, the flight, the purpose of the flight is the mission of the organization. For a business, it's to generate value and profit for the owners. For a different type of organization, say nonprofit, that mission is different. But every organization has a mission and it has a strategy to achieve that mission and purpose. But it feels like what we're encountering right now is quite a lot of turbulence through these uncertainties. And so, what we're trying to accomplish in this program is to enable leaders and give leaders frameworks and tools and skills to fly the plane, achieve the mission of your organization in these times of significant turbulence. So let me explain what the program, how the program does this. And I'm going to start with sort of an overview of the curriculum, actually, what we teach. And this should illustrate that this is not, in fact, a technical accounting program. It's also different from something like an MBA. It's really sort of tailored to the world of information and accounting and finance. I've grouped the curriculum into these three areas that I'll talk through really quickly. One is accounting leadership. So this is accounting issues, but from a leadership strategic perspective. And when I use the word accounting, I'm not talking about just debits and credits. I'm really talking about anything that touches on information, its supply, its production, both information that's disclosed outside of an organization and information that's used internally in the organization for decision making. The second area of curriculum is people and organizations. So, as you advance in your careers and take on more senior roles, your ability to drive impact is going to be shaped more and more by your effectiveness in interacting with people and persuading people. The third area of the curriculum is data and decisions. So we are immersed in a flood of data, and we would like to be able to use data in ways that drive better decision making. So these are the three broad areas of the curriculum in the Executive Mac program. So let me give you some examples here of some of the modules that fall into these different curriculum areas and how we approach these topics. So starting with the area of accounting leadership. So a few modules in this area. One is what we call strategic performance management. This one has to do with how information is used inside of a company for decision making. So things like budgeting and managing performance and incentives, these types of issues, all aligned towards facilitating an organization's achievement of its strategy and its mission. Another module that falls in this area is what we call global financial reporting. And this is a financial accounting, financial reporting module, but it isn't, again, a sort of debits and credits module, but rather this module focuses on the most ambiguous areas and complex areas in financial reporting. And what do leaders in accounting and finance need to understand about those areas of ambiguity? Whether they are scrutinizing and analyzing the financial statements of other companies, or whether they have some responsibility for financial reporting inside their own organization. Another module in this area is the sustainability module, which I lead. And this is a module that focuses on sustainability reporting and sustainability disclosures. So if you've been following this area in the last 5 years or so, you know that there's been quite a lot of development in the world of mandatory sustainability reporting standards. So in this module, we talk about why we why we have those standards. What are some reasons why they've come about? What can we reasonably expect them to accomplish? What do they say? What do they require? And how can organizations approach the task of sustainability reporting in a way that creates value in the organization and strengthens relationships with stakeholders? Our audit module also fits under this umbrella of accounting leadership. So in the audit module, we don't teach our students how to do an audit, but rather we approach audit and we critically examine audit systems as governance mechanisms because they are a key governance mechanism to enhance our trust in information. But in a lot of ways, the audit mechanism might be failing to live up to its potential. So we take a really critical look at why that is. And this is a theme that we weave throughout the program is the critical analysis of a system to understand where it's working, where it's not working, and then how do we work towards improved systems? How do we make audit work in a healthy way inside an organization? So again, accounting topics, information related topics, but from a very strategic and leadership oriented lens. Another module that falls under this umbrella is what we call the Critical Issues in Accounting Speaker Series. And this is a module where we bring in guest speakers from industry who are senior professionals, very senior professionals, executives, and leaders of organizations to talk about and share their experiences on a particular topic. And the topic rotates every year. So we've had speaker series topics on cryptocurrency and blockchain, on ESG, on AI, on disinformation. And this year, our upcoming speaker series is on leadership in times of disruption. So related to some of the topics we've been talking about so far tonight. So we're hearing from CFOs and heads of internal audit and some other business leaders talking about how they're thinking about these topics. Okay, so this is designed to bring in very timely, industry relevant perspectives from leaders in the world. Okay, that's the point of that module. All right, so that's a quick look at the accounting leadership area of the curriculum. Now, moving on to people and organizations. So, one thing I always tell my students in the context of maybe a traditional accounting module is that every number you see on the financial statements is actually the product of a human system and a negotiation even. It requires human subjectivity and judgment and discretion. These human systems are really critical for us to understand. And there are frameworks that can help us understand these human systems. And there are also experiential modules in the program that help us understand more about ourselves and how we interact with other people. So I want to just highlight a couple of modules in this area of the curriculum of people and organizations. And the first one is change leadership. Okay. So, one of our sort of fundamental ideas in our program is that change is needed all around us. Individuals need to change, and teams need to change, and divisions inside of organizations need to change, and organizations that need to change, and the world needs to change. But change is really difficult, and people naturally resist change, and organizations are even worse because organizations are designed intentionally to resist change. So, in this module, we start to understand why that is. Why is it that humans are so resistant to change? Why is it that organizations are so resistant to change? And understanding those barriers from the perspectives of individual psychology and organizational psychology behavioral economics and operations, etc., can give us an idea of how to think about change frameworks that might be more successful. Okay, again, that's the point of this module is to you give our students some useful, relevant frameworks for approaching a change project. So if you aren't already, at some point in your career, you probably will be responsible for leading a change related project. And so this will ideally equip with some tools to support that. Um, Another module inside of the people and organizations curriculum area is what we call interpersonal dynamics. And this is a module that focuses on communication and relationships and interaction among people as individuals. So some of the key themes that we bring up in this module are things like trust. How is trust established among people? And how is trust eroded among people? We talk about power. What does power mean? And how is power acquired by individuals? And what forms of power might exist in human systems? And how do we need to be aware of that as we interact with other people and try to have influence and be persuasive? So, our interpersonal dynamics does a couple of things. One, it introduces some frameworks for thinking about these ideas of things like trust and power and the role of emotions in human systems. And it's also an experiential sort of laboratory type of setting where students get an opportunity to practice these things sort of in real time, and then do some reflection on their experiences. So we have them. I have here just screenshots from a survey, sort of a self-inventory we have our students do before they take the module, and then again after they do the module to sort of allow them to reflect on how we perceive ourselves, how others perceive us. Okay. All right, good. So that's the second area of the curriculum. The third area of the curriculum that I want to talk about is what I call data and decisions. And what falls into this area, broadly speaking, is how we could use data and computational techniques to, one, generate and answer relevant questions, and then two, automate or improve tasks and decisions. So quite a lot of stuff would would fall under this area conceptually. But here's how we think about data and decisions. So I can lay this out as a process. And it's laid out nice and linearly here with boxes and arrows, but of course in real life it's never that straightforward. But we might think of part of this process as being coming up with questions. So we have some question related to our organization. So maybe we have a decision to make. So should we extend credit to this borrower? So how risky is this loan? Or maybe we're trying to decide if there are any potentially fraudulent transactions during this period. Or maybe we have a more causal question. We have something going on in the organization like attrition, and we want to understand what might be driving that or causing that attrition so that we can intervene and manage the causes of whatever thing we're observing. So once we have some questions, then we can start to think about data and gathering data and preparing data for whatever analysis we're going to do. And this data could be transactional data, it could be financial data, it could be non-financial, it could be data that we gather through a survey. It could use social media, it could use some combination of all these things that are merged. And often in these data intensive processes, this is actually the most time intensive step because data is really messy and it's formatted differently. And if you work in a large organization, you probably have different systems, and unless you've gone through the painful process of harmonizing everything. But in any case, we have to get some data. Now, sometimes things go the other direction, don't they? Sometimes we find a data set, we discover some data set, and we might think, oh, what questions could I answer with this data set? So there could be some iteration here, of course. Once we have some data, then we have to come up with some way to analyze the data and answer the question. And this can range from something like a data visualization through something more statistical, like a simple hypothesis test, univariate statistical techniques, descriptive statistics, up through regression, or even something like machine learning or natural language processing. And then some action needs to be taken on this based on this analysis. Okay. And so it's really critical, I think, that we as leaders in the world of accounting and finance, or whatever your area is, really take a close look at all of these all of these areas and understand the sort of nuances around these for better decision making. So our approach to this area of curriculum, I can put this sort of on a spectrum. Okay, so on one end of the spectrum would be programs with relatively less technical detail. And that would be something like an executive education program, a sort of non-degree, a 3-day program or something. Or most sort of MBA style programs would be fall under this less technical detail, where the approach is to deliver some fairly high level intuition or overview of these technologies and these processes. And then on the other end of the spectrum, which is more technical detail, would be something like a master's in data science, or something like a master's in software engineering, or something like that, that prepares students for full-time data analysis roles. Our program is situated in the middle here. What we're trying to do is develop sophisticated managers and consumers of data analytics and AI, machine learning technologies, by going deeper into the technologies than you would in sort of a typical MBA program, but not as much as you'd see in a full-time data science type of program. How do we achieve this? Well, we have some modules that are dedicated sort of exclusively to this topic. One is data visualization. So in the data visualization module, our students learn to use Tableau, both to explore data sets, so to understand data sets and the structure of the data that you have in a data set. And by the way, no matter what sort of sophisticated statistical technique might be employed on a data set, just about everyone starts with a constructive visualizations of a data set. So it's really important for exploratory analysis. It's also important for explanatory analysis, so communicating with data. So we can convey relationships between variables very quickly and very efficiently using visualizations. Okay, so we have a module that covers data visualization. We have another module that covers what we call predictive analytics. And this is particularly relevant in the context of AI because when you use a large language model or a generative AI model, what you're using is built on a prediction engine, right? An algorithm that is trying to predict what you want. What's the next word and phrase and sentence or the next image or video that's going to make you happy as the user and the person that prompted the system. So in the predictive analytics module, we have our students learn to write a little bit of code in Python, enough to read a data set and to employ machine learning algorithms to make a prediction using real data. Okay. So in that way, our students learn to actually understand by going through the process of writing a bit of code, how these predictive algorithms work. We assume no knowledge of programming and no programming experience prior to entering the program. We assume our students are starting from zero in terms of writing code. So we walk our students through that very, very gently. Another module in that falls under this area is called analytics and organizations, and that's one where we look at some things like biases in AI and risks in AI algorithms and machine learning algorithms, as well as some other innovations sort of around blockchain and cryptocurrency, and some anomaly detection techniques and algorithms. Okay. Um, so I want to discuss one thing now, which is AI. All right. So that's sort of on everyone's minds. And I want to introduce how we approach this topic in the Cambridge Executive Mac program. So I've already mentioned our approach towards technical discussion of AI algorithms through our predictive analytics module. So that's the technical lens on AI that we bring. But we also examine AI technologies through multiple perspectives and other lenses. So going around this circle, we also talk about AI algorithms from the governance perspective. So what do boards and executives need to be aware of regarding the opportunities and risks as AI systems that could potentially hallucinate or be completely wrong are rolled out throughout an organization when we might not actually know what we're doing with them. And we might not actually have a concrete use case for them. They're just available for people to figure out how to use. That presents a particular type of governance risk and approach that we talk about. We talk about risks more broadly. What are the risks of using AI in organizations? We talk about the economics of the AI ecosystem, so the profitability of different entities in the ecosystem and organizations, and the business models and the unit economics of the technologies themselves. We also look at the sustainability implications of AI. So there's quite a lot there from, the power consumption and water consumption of massive data centers that may or may not be built, and the measurement and disclosure of sustainability related matters such as greenhouse gas emissions from these data centers, as well as the human element in these AI companies and in the AI ecosystem, data labelers, content moderation, this kind of thing. We also talk about use cases in accounting and finance. For example, what is AI doing in the audit space? How are auditors thinking about using AI? How are regulators thinking about allowing auditors to use AI tools? And how is this affecting pricing? How is this affecting economics in the AI, in the audit space? We also talk about bias, mitigating bias in AI systems, because the machine learning and AI systems are developed by training algorithms on some corpus of data. There are opportunities for bias to enter into the systems at various points in the process, from design of the system all the way through use of the system. And so we unpack how these biases might sort of creep in to these systems, how they have manifest in these systems as they're used and how we might think about mitigating these types of biases. Okay, so I wanted to put this in there to give you a flavor for how we approach in a multidisciplinary way a topic that's very new and very timely, such as AI. Okay. Um, Another aspect of the program that I want to talk about briefly is our team consulting project. So, our students don't write a dissertation, so there's no sort of requirement for a big individual written paper. But as sort of a capstone experience in the program, our students work in teams to deliver some consulting project for an outside client. Okay, so this is very open-ended and student-led. So students form their teams, students source a project with the client with the help of faculty mentors who help them scope the project and then deliver on whatever the client needs and whatever the project is defined as. So, to give you some examples of some recent projects, we recently had a student group work for an organization called EBRP. So, epidermolysis bullosa is a rare skin disease that afflicts children. It's very painful and often leads to an untimely death. And it's a curable disease, but it's rare enough that it doesn't attract enough funding to advance towards a cure. So this organization is called the Venture Philanthropy Organization, and so it combines elements of for-profit investments through equity stakes with nonprofit ideas of reinvesting those gains into further research towards curing other diseases. So this project was working with this organization to develop some planning, some strategic plans, and also some donor identification and screening tools. Another organization that our students have worked with recently is called TIE. TIE is an organization based in Tanzania that uses animation and animated storytelling for sort of public service communication. So things around hygiene, for example. Ty makes sort of videos for, let's say, teenage girls learning about pregnancy and things like this. Okay, so this organization was looking for sort of advice on alternative revenue streams and also some advice on setting up a sort of internal measurement and reporting framework that might enable them to scale their operations and grow a little bit more aggressively. And then a third recent client is a company called Willow, which is a manufacturer of water pumps, and the students completed a really strategic assessment of how KPIs were used and communicated throughout the organization. They conducted a survey of employees. They were able to synthesize the results and present them to senior management. So these projects can range from more sort of technical and sort of delivering a model or some tools to a client, all the way to a much more strategic type of engagement. Again, really driven by student interest and client needs. But it's an opportunity to synthesize and apply what students have learned in the program in an environment that has some tangible impact. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit just about the format of the program. So the centerpiece and sort of the program is our residential weeks in Cambridge. And the program is part-time and it runs for 2 years. And there are 8 residential weeks spread out over these 2 years. So roughly 1 week every quarter, the students come to Cambridge. And those weeks are pretty intense in the classroom. So classes from about 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday, which leaves most of the evenings free for students to either spend some time together or catch up on emails and work. And then usually once a week in a residential, we have a nice dinner at a Cambridge college, which is a really lovely setting and time to get together. So what happens is in the 6 to 9 weeks leading up to a residential week, we have online content that students work through to prepare for the modules we cover in a residential week. And we usually cover 2 modules in a residential week. So, leading up to the residential, the students are working through asynchronous content. So, there's no live online content or lectures to attend. It can all be worked through in your own time. It's completely flexible. So you might be reading case studies and responding to questions on a forum. You might be watching some videos. You might be discussing some ideas um, online with other students related to these modules. Then you come to Cambridge for the residential week where we do the in-person discussion of these modules. And then following the residential week, students are working through their assessments for those modules. And then the cycle starts over again with the new modules, the next 2 modules for the next residential week, online prep for the week, and then the week, and then the assessment. So that's sort of how the program is structured. So what we do in the classroom is really important to the program. And in the classroom, our model is not sort of lecture at the students. It's much more interactive, debate, discussion, case study focused learning. But outside of the classroom, the impact of the networks that you make and connect with at Cambridge is going to have an impact on your career as much as the content that we deliver in the classroom. So our program is smaller by design. We usually have 20 to 25 students in a cohort. Most of our students have between sort of 8 to 15 years of postgraduate work experience. We do have some with less experience and some with more experience. Um, it's not necessary that a student has an accounting background to be admitted to this program. So about half of our students, 50 to 60% of our students do have some experience in accounting through some professional qualification or study or work experience. But then another 40% don't have an accounting background. So we have students as well from corporate finance backgrounds, from consulting, from entrepreneurship, from legal backgrounds, public policy, NGOs, IT backgrounds. So we have a breadth of professional backgrounds, which is which makes for much richer discussions in the classroom. Okay, so that's an important feature of the program. The cohort is truly global as well. So usually roughly a third of the students come from UK and Europe, about a third from Asia, and about a third from North, South America, Middle East, Africa. The global perspective is also very important in classroom discussions. So we can get perspectives on these issues from people literally around the world. So, as a student in the Executive Mac program, of course, you plug into the Executive Mac networks. You'll be able to connect with your cohort and with the cohort ahead and the cohort behind, as well as other alumni and future alumni of the program. And we've designed this program to really support a broad set of career paths, including sort of paths towards CFO or partnership, roles that are more data oriented, more sustainability oriented, more policy oriented, but accelerating towards leadership and more responsibility. Um, okay, now the application is still open and it's open through the 5th of June. And there are still places available in this cohort that will enroll in September of 2026. So it's not the case that it's too late that you've missed you've missed your chance. You don't need to wait until the next cycle because there will be spaces available for qualified applicants. If you feel like this is a program that might be of interest to you, I would strongly encourage you to visit our homepage and click on the profile review link there. And that will allow you to submit a CV to us. And then we can get back to you with advice on application and also with the opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with me about whether this program might be a good fit for you. Okay, so we can discuss individual circumstances, individual situations. If you're thinking this is an interesting program, but I'm not sure my experience is quite right for it, or is my career path something that is going to be supported by this program? I'm very happy to have these conversations. This is really just the beginning of the opportunity for you to get information about the program. So we'd love to connect for further conversations, and the profile review is a great way to do that. Okay. All right. So with that, I think we have some time for some questions. Is that right, Aiden?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for that, Mike. That was really, really insightful. Fantastic overview of the program. So, what I've tried to do is try to capture a lot of the questions. Some of them have overlapping themes, and I think you've actually managed to cover a lot of it in the session so far, which is fantastic. But maybe it's worth going back over a few of these key points that have come through in the questions. So we'll cover a few of these first, but please do keep posting them in the Q&A box if you have any questions that you'd like us to cover. One of the topics that has come up quite a lot in the questions in discussions with a lot of the applicants this year is that many leaders need to innovate quickly in their companies or in their organizations while they're staying compliant. So the question is, how does this program help leaders to learn to balance speed, risk, and good governance as they try to lead innovation as a finance leader? So maybe that's a good kicking off point we can start with.
That's a great question, and th this is a fundamental tension that's always there in business, right? We want to drive and incentivize and motivate high performance and innovation and some risk taking, good risk taking, while balancing that with risk management and good governance, as the question asked. So if you think about senior roles like a CFO, CFOs have a strong compliance obligation, running the internal controls and the financial reporting inside an organization. And they also have a commercial responsibility to support the profitability of the organization. Boards of directors are sort of structured differently around the world, but they have a similar sort of dual role of advising, strategically advising management and also monitoring management and representing the shareholders' interests in the relationship with managers. So this is something that's always sort of top of mind in everything that we talk about. But I think some of the keys that we bring out in the in the program are one is sort of balancing incentives for performance with strong internal controls. Okay, so where the incentives are very strong, then this internal control environment has to be quite strong. Internal audit has to be strong to sort of manage that. Ways of thinking about risk and managing risk that enable the organization's performance, I think, are quite important. And then frameworks for innovation, but always with an eye towards risk management and striking that balance. And I think, case studies and hearing from practitioners on their experiences are also another way we deliver that.
Perhaps learning from each other as well in the classroom, because there was quite a few questions around are you able to learn from your classmates and from their experiences of going through this significant change that nearly every candidate that I've spoken with recently has said that their organization is going through some kind of drastic change, and they're asking whether this program can help them to take a leadership role in that change, especially if they're in quite a complex organization, and whether they'll be able to learn from each other during that experience and be able to have a supportive community of colleagues that are going through similar things and facing similar challenges.
Yes, absolutely. So we strongly encourage our students to share their experiences in the classroom. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a breadth of professional diversity in the program and global diversity in the program. Um, we have also our students have one of those residential weeks is our elective week. And For that elective week, our students, our electives are pooled with the executive MBA programs elective. So the executive students and the executive MBA students choose from the same set of electives and sit together in those classes. So that's an opportunity also for our students to connect with even a broader network, people with broader experience who may have gone through, a big acquisition and, can speak to what that process was like from, from the idea, from the due diligence phase, out on the post-merger integration phase. So absolutely, and that's a hallmark of the learning experience at Cambridge.
Amazing. There are, of course, a lot of questions about how we approach AI and analytics, and I think you covered this really well on our approach to this in the session. The question, one of the specific questions was, how does this program prepare leaders to use data more effectively in their decision making? So I think you covered this really well. But if there's any point you'd like to emphasize, another chance to cover that.
Yeah. So one of the problems with data-driven decision making is there's often a lack of understanding uh, on the part of decision makers of the analytical techniques that were used on the data. So they don't understand the algorithms, the strengths and limitations of those algorithms. So this analysis might get done and it might be really solid analysis, but if the decision makers don't really understand some of the details of that analysis, it's difficult to have confidence to make a decision. So, one of the things that we try to do in this program is to bridge that gap under the assumption that our students are going to be the decision makers in these data-oriented analyses and questions, and bridge the gap of understanding so that our students can actually use the data to make better decisions.
Amazing. There's a few practical questions that have come through. One of them is just for someone who's comparing this program with an executive MBA or a full-time MBA or a master in finance in particular, what makes this program distinctive?
Good question. So, one is that the curriculum is fundamentally different. So, in an MBA program, which they're fantastic programs, I have an MBA myself. MBA program is sort of a more generalist business program. So, students begin by taking, introductory finance, accounting, marketing, operations, strategy, organizational behavior, leadership, and they go on to some electives and the breadth of students would include bankers and consultants and people from private equity, but also police officers and nurses and opera singers and Olympic athletes. And they go off into a similarly broad sort of set of career paths, at least in the full-time type of program. A Master of Finance, so a typical Master of Finance program would cover things like microeconomic theory, macroeconomic theory, corporate finance, accounting, derivatives, private equity, banking and money, venture capital, some electives, and typically sort of channel people into sort of financial services or PE, VC type of careers. Our program is a bit different. It's certainly not as broad as an MBA, and it is anchored to topics that are relevant for experienced people working in accounting and finance and other spaces who are looking to strengthen their leadership capabilities, leadership, innovation, decision making as they advance towards senior roles. Okay. And the curriculum is really fundamentally different and fundamentally unique. So it is different from an MBA, it's different from an MPhil, and it's actually different from any other program that I'm aware of.
Amazing. I know we're running short of time, but maybe just a couple last questions. One that's come up is quite straightforward. It is, what qualities do you look for in an applicant who will get the most value out of a program like this? So, who are you looking for? Who's going to benefit most from it?
Good. Yeah. So we're looking for someone who has some evidence of impact in their career. And that's not necessarily measured by years of experience. It's measured by you talking about your stories and the things that you've done in your application essays. And then in the interview, so selected candidates, after we review their application, are invited to interview with me. We go into more depth about the impact you've had and the accomplishments you've had in your career. But one thing that's really important to us as a program that is quite unique is that students have a good understanding of what this program is about, and they genuinely want to be a part of the program and a part of the community and the alumni community, because this really is about building a global community in the Executive Mac program, and we want students who genuinely want to be a part of that. We also want students who are going to bring something to the classroom discussion. And as we talked about earlier in an earlier question, the learning from one another is very important in the classroom, and so we want someone who can both learn from others and have something to offer and something to give in the classroom discussions.
Amazing. And I guess maybe we can end on this last question, which is around how are candidates meant to balance their professional commitments if they have high pressure roles with doing a program like this, which has so much to offer? How are they meant to work around really making the most of the Cambridge experience? Are they able to experience, the wider university, and then balancing their time with their professional commitments? What happens if they perhaps can't attend a certain session or a residential? What is the process around that?
Good. So, first of all, the weeks in Cambridge, again, are quite intense, and the students do need to be physically present in Cambridge. We know that there are, exceptions that we consider case by case for illness and things like that. And, but being in Cambridge is very important because that's where the bulk of the learning happens. In the lead up to the residentials, we tell our students to expect to budget about 10 hours a week to spend on reviewing material and preparing for the residentials. And if students are able to budget that kind of time, then they'll be well prepared for the residential weeks. Again, that content is asynchronous and not live, so students can complete it in their own time. And so it's very flexible in that sense. Another thing to remember about the part-time format is we seek opportunities to give students assessments that are very open-ended that they can apply to their role. So, for example, we've had students in the data visualization module for their project for that module actually take some data from work and build a dashboard that and some of those students have then implemented those, and those continue to be used today in their roles. And they're actively generating value. They're saving on costs or generating revenue. So there's opportunities to have tangible impact in real time and apply what you learn in your role. So in that way, we seek a real strong synergy between what we're doing in the classroom and your professional life.
Amazing. Perfect. So I think we'll wrap up there. Do you have any final thoughts, any last messages to leave our attendees with before we close off the session today?
Just again, we're very happy to answer any additional questions you might have, and please reach out to us if there's anything at all that we can help with.
Amazing. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for giving us that overview of the program. Thank you all for attending the session today. We will email you all with the links to the profile review form with our email address. If you want to get in contact and ask any questions, we'll make it as easy as possible. So as Mike said, please do connect with us. We're here to help. But thank you so much, Mike, and thank you all for attending today. Hopefully we'll see you all in Cambridge in the near future. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.